for Career Center monthly board meeting together. It is now 5:01, and I'd like to do introduction of board members. I'll start with Kim.
Kim Farnham from New Haven, the Mount Abraham Community at Large member.
Lorraine.
Lorraine Moore, representing Addison Central School District.
Christina.
Hi, everybody. Christina Macklin, Addison Northwest School District Representative.
Nick. Nick.
Me?
Yeah, Nick.
From Shoreham, representing ACSD, Nick Coulson.
Steve.
Steve Rooney from the Mount Abe Unified School District.
Mike.
Mike McGrath, Addison Northwest.
And a warm welcome to our newest board member, Karen. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Karen Beinhauer from Shoreham and Addison County Workforce Salon representative.
Judd.
Judd Markowski, business representative. I never remember what to call myself, what the title is. Can you remind me, Suzanne, what the title is?
You are the, you can call yourself the WIB representative. WIB.
WIP representative.
Workforce Investment Board, Judd for.
Great. I always forget that. Thank you.
Great. Let's see. Patrice.
I am Patrice Alexander, and I'm from HCC.
Linda.
Linda Barrett Clerk.
Dana.
Dana Peterson, Superintendent Director, Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District.
David.
David Roberts, Adult Ed Coordinator.
Sean, you just joined us. Can you introduce yourself?
Sean Flynn, Workforce Investment Board.
Thank you. Austin.
Austin Haynes, Business Manager.
Jay.
Jay Stetzel, Assistant Director.
And for guests, we have Gretchen Jackson.
Gretchen Bailey. Yep.
Yep. Jake.
Jake Burnham, engineering architect, computer science teacher.
Lisa. Oh, Lisa says her audio is not available. It's Lisa Rader, Hannaford Career Center teacher, mom, Middlebury taxpayer.
Wendy.
Oh, I'm still trying to go through the list.
Oh, sorry.
So Wendy.
Wendy Pratt, curriculum coach and IB coordinator.
Now we have MCTV. I think that's everyone. Did I miss anyone that would like to say who they are? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved, Kim.
Moved by
Second,
Kim.
Judd.
Seconded by Judd to approve the agenda as written.
Kim, Suzanne, we have under correspondence, we have a couple of, I mean, I don't know if you have the same agenda that I have, but I have a gift. I have two gifts as opposed to one. So just so that we can address those at the same time. We got a very late offering, and I'll explain that later in the meeting.
Board's okay with that. I'm just going to add an S to gift.
Yep.
Make it gifts. And
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as it's given, adding an S to gift. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed?
One item.
Yes, Steve.
Are we going to note somewhere that we're tabling the minutes from the last meeting and moving them on to January?
So since they were not on the agenda, they'll automatically go to the next meeting.
Okay.
They were already tabled, so they can't be tabled again.
But they were not warned for this meeting, so I'll just add them to the agenda for the next time.
Very good.
Were there any abstentions on approving the agenda? Hearing none, motion's passed. Visitor comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Dana?
Yes, correspondence. We have a couple of things. First of all, you should have in your packet a resignation from Paul Orzechowski, and I'll read this just for the benefit of MCTV. Paul writes, "I'm sad to say that I'm giving my 4 weeks notice to end my employment with Patricia A. Hannaford Career Center effective January 1st, 2021. I'd like to thank Hayden and Gretchen, who helped me really enjoy and learn a lot the last 2.5 years as an automotive instructor. I loved and will miss teaching the kids. I realized just how much I want to stay current with the newest technologies and look forward to becoming a GM world-class technician again. There's just too much screen time and too much work that is done outside of school hours. Now I can tell people that I tried and it was not for me. I'm happy that I had this opportunity to see what it is like to be an automotive instructor. Thanks, Paul Orzechowski." We'll be taking that up under later on under the action section of the agenda, but I will go over the two, if there are no, it's just the correspondence. We have a donation of $100 that was being offered to the Addison Repertory Theater. So I would like to present that to the board. The next thing, the gift that came in as a last minute donation is something that one of our suppliers offered to us because they're discontinuing some product, and that is a stain. And so they have to rid themselves of that, and it will be a write-off for them, and the company will not take any a profit from it, and they will not be getting any revenue from that. But they have to find a willing recipient in order to meet tax responsibilities. So it's and something called Stain Master, Master Stain, excuse me, and it's being donated to hopefully benefit the Career Center. I've spoken with John Curler, who's touched base with some of our program instructors, and he touched base with me to let me know that the product could be put to good use. And we've been told that we can either use it in our programming or we could use it as a fundraiser. Either would be okay. They gave us an entire inventory of what we'll receive, but I will spare you the need to go through that. But I will tell you that the retail value is approximately $1,600. And all they need is acknowledgement that we have received and accepted this donation. So as I indicated earlier, they have a supplier that has replaced the product line and with an updated formula and packaging. And so this is being discontinued, and they can make it a gift and allow themselves and the supplier to take that as a tax write-off. Thank you. That's all I have at this point.
So under the consent agenda, we have the minutes of November 4th and 11. Has everyone read those? Yeah, okay. Nick, can you go over the monthly accounts? Did you bring those with you?
Yes, I've got them. So out of the building and equipment reserve, we have 3947 and 20 cents. The general fund, there were 3 lots of approvals for a total of 94,377 and 21 cents. There was nothing in the revolving fund, McClure, Makery, and the payrolls were for November 20th, 83,671.23 cents, and for December the 4th, 81,578.40. That's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Nick around those?
They were approved by Suzanne and myself, I guess.
So when we approve the agenda, we approve the consent agenda. So we'll continue to move on.
Can't hear you.
Policy 2.4, is that you, Austin, tonight?
Yeah, policy 2.4 is mine. So this is a quarterly report that we review. We looked at it back in September of this year. But it's basically just outlining that the school, namely Dana and I, will not put the school in a position of risk, financially speaking. And it references some recent financial conditions and activities we've gone over in more detail. But high level, this page, one pager basically outlines the internal controls that we have with respect to our purchase order system and the process by which staff and personnel submit a purchase requisition, and then it is checked by and reviewed by board members. It details how revenues are tracked internally, and just kind of goes through what our cash flow monitoring system is and using our line of credit when we're in a cash negative position. I think it's worth noting recently, since this report came out, we received some revenue from our annual tuition payments. So we just got a nice slug in and paid down our line of credit. We made a $300,000 payment just recently on that to bring the balance down to $500,000. Other than that, that's kind of the gist. Are there any questions about the specific language or details that I included? Hearing none, I'll assume. Yeah, go for it, Nick.
Nick, was 775,000 the highest the line of credit's been used?
I think it's close in recent history. When I go through what we've pulled last year, we took out 850 as of December 4th, and then in previous years we're right around that number. Okay. And then in early December is usually when we get tuition payments coming in from the AOE and sending towns. So we got 2 checks on Monday, which were just over 600,000 alone. So that helped pay off a substantial amount of the principal.
Good.
And we're expecting another round this week and next week.
Good.
John, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Good.
With what you expect to get in the next couple of weeks, does that take the line of credit back down close to zero, or is there still then some left over?
Yeah, it should be paid off in full this month, so I don't think there's any reason to expect we'll have a balance to carry forward in the new year.
Great, thank you.
And typically we're right around 3,500 to 5 is the ballpark for interest, and that's pretty typical with years past.
Great, thank you.
Was there anyone else that had any? No. May I have a motion to approve policy 2.4, please, financial planning?
So moved.
Second, Judd.
So it was moved by Nick and seconded by Judd to approve policy 2.4, financial, the finance piece. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving 2.4, the financial planning, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. We now move on to accepting the letter of resignation from Paul. Do I have a motion to do that, please?
So moved, Judd.
Judd moved,
Seconded, Sean.
seconded by Sean to approve the, or accept, I should say, the resignation of Paul with regrets. Is there any conversation or discussion about it? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of accepting Paul's resignation, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Dana?
Yes.
Gift, please.
Yes, so the first is a gift for $100 to ART.
I have a motion to accept the donation of $100 to the ART program.
I can't hear someone.
Then your audio is cutting in and out.
So what my audio issue is, folks, is that here in Bridport, they've put two lines together to get me an upload speed, and it's as high as they can go. And I just found out this week that it can't go any higher and that my voice keeps cutting out. So some meetings I've had to resort to chat. So I apologize. Just let me know when you can't hear me. So may I have a motion to accept the $100 ART donation?
So moved, Sean.
John moved it. Is there a second?
Second, Nick.
Nick has seconded the motion to accept the $100 for the ART program. Is there any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of accepting the $100 donation to the ART program, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Dana, the next gift, please.
The next gift is, as I mentioned, under correspondence. It's a product for stain, and the approximate value is $1,600.
Dana, do you know if why their stain was discontinued? It's not that it can't be used because of environmental reasons, is it?
No, it is not. John reviewed that. It's just that they've changed the quality of the stain, and they've upgraded it, so they're allowing their distributors to take a credit by making a donation. So John has looked into that and feels that it's of quality that would benefit the Career Center.
Thank you. May I have a motion to accept the approximately $1,600 of master stain for the Career Center?
I'll move that.
Mike has moved the motion.
Second, Judd.
Judd has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of accepting the approximately $600 value of master stain?
Excuse me, 1,600.
That's what I said, was 16, sorry.
All right, sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's all right, approximately $1,600 paint master stain. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Where are we? Lorraine,
Yeah.
policies.
Yes, you'll see on our agenda, there are 6 policies that we need to approve tonight. We've shown them to you before, we've warned them. So they are the responsible computer network and internet use, the class size policy, board conflict of interest, alcohol and drug-free workplace, tobacco prohibition, and electronic communication. So if there are no questions.
Judd has a question.
Yes, Judd.
The terminology remains on class size policy implementation, section number 1, the superintendent and his or her designee. I have suggested on multiple occasions that his or her be changed to their. I think it's clearer and it reflects the updated terminology for genders and such. I still feel that his or her should be changed to their.
I think, Judd, that was a clerical error, and I'll take responsibility for it because we reviewed all of the policies based on your recommendation at the last policy committee. It must have been one that was just omitted.
Thank you very much.
So we'll make that change.
Terrific. Thank you.
Good. Thanks for your good eyes.
Are there any other comments, questions on the policies?
Nick?
Nick?
On the same class size policy, are we going to have a discussion later on as to the implications of these sizes? Or are we just going to approve the policy now?
Can you help me with where you're going, Nick? Sorry, I'm not
Well,
following.
I think it says something like 8 is the minimum for each class.
So Nick, let me clarify.
Depending on the environment and the requirements of work boards, et cetera, et cetera.
So Nick, let me clarify. The class size table is the procedure that we would operate under. It is something that we can adjust and adapt as needed. The policy itself is what you're voting on right now.
Okay.
Does that help, Nick?
Sort of. Yeah, it does.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions, or Judd?
Yep, Judd. It's basically the same comment, but I missed this one earlier. It's in the board member conflict of interest. Again, in definition, the second paragraph, bottom line, harmed by his or her actions should be changed to their actions, I feel.
All of those, Judd, we will review them. I thought that I did my own preliminary review and I thought that they were all taken care of. So I'll take responsibility for that.
Great, thank you very much.
Which policy is that? That's
Board conflict of interest, right, Judd?
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether there's a version control issue because I thought that I had done all of the reviews to make sure that they were complete.
Okay,
but apparently, either there's a version control issue or I just missed them. So
what is the board's pleasure? Do you want to approve, knowing that there's some word that's need to be changed, or do you want to approve some and push some off because there's wording? What's your pleasure?
I've moved to Judd. I move to approve pending those changes. I also feel like those changes will continue happening over further policy committee stuff. So I think over time, even if they get missed on this round, I think they will continue to be caught up upon. Thank you.
Is there a second to Judd's motion?
Can't hear you.
I have one small point of order.
Steve?
Just that in the agenda, it's discussed as a warning, not a posting.
that was supposed to be corrected to action. They were warned last month, Steve.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was confused about. I thought
This
maybe
is the second reading.
I thought we were doing a second reading for posting.
It should say second reading.
All right.
Yeah, I did wonder about that too. It was a little confusing.
Yeah, I saw that too. It is under action items, but. So Suzanne, are you looking for a second on Judd's? I will second that.
So Judd moved to approve the policies. Knowing that we have some word change smithing to do, his or her to their. Seconded by Lorraine. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion's passed. So the next piece that we have on the docket is the board subcommittee assignments. So the one subcommittee assignment that we have coming up is the negotiations committee. And I have reached out to several people and who I have on the committee thus far is myself, Kim, Steve Rooney, and Judd. Did I get everyone that said yes to me? Steve, don't look so excited.
Suzanne, would you repeat
He
those?
tries to run away.
No, my wife just won't.
Can you repeat those names, please, Suzanne?
Kim Farnham, Steve Rooney, Judd Markowski, and myself. Mike is going to be like, Mike and Lorraine have agreed to be like the encyclopedias to help us so that if we don't understand the history of something, we're going to go back to our encyclopedias and they'll help us out. Correct, folks?
Yep.
Thank you.
Suzanne, I didn't realize, is there a reason you thought you needed 4 people this time? I was surprised that you were going to be on. I thought it was going to be Kim, Suzanne, and Kim, Steve, and Judd.
I had just said that I would be part of it. It's going to be a learning experience for me. I've not been on a negotiation committee before. So figured I might as well get my feet wet. That's all. Budget presentation. Dana, we're 4 minutes behind and you have on here 25 minutes for you.
Yep. Let me see if I can share my screen.
While Dana's doing that, I just want to say thank you guys for offering to be on the negotiating committee. I personally appreciate that.
Yeah, me too. Patrice, I need to be able to share my screen. You need to make me the host or co-host, please.
I will second that.
Patrice, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You need to make me a co-host so I can share my screen.
Go here or make Can you hear me?
I can.
Sorry. Okay, there you go. Sorry about that.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just, okay. So this is our draft budget overview for the 2022 budget cycle. And I'd like to introduce Austin, our new Director of School Business Management and Finance. And I'm Dana Peterson, Superintendent and Director of the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District, for anybody who's out there and is curious about who's presenting this evening. So the first part of the overview, we are looking at a total proposed expense budget of $3,798,388. This has been refined since we first made some projections back in October. The change from the FY21 budget is approximately $66,363 compared to $3,864,000 $751 budget for the current year. That is slightly below the $75,000 that we had projected at a high level, but we have not finished every single line by line analysis. So there are additional savings that may be accrued. When we look at our revenues, we do have some more fixed numbers than we had when we presented in November. And the state-based tuition payment, 6 semester average should net us $1,185,667. The tuition assistance grant should net us about $476,992. We have transportation reimbursement at $12,000. That might be a little conservative because we are incurring additional transportation costs this year, and we might have some more next year. We're not projecting that as transportation reimbursement, but we are trying to budget conservatively. Interest income is also very conservative at $500. We don't know when the interest rates may fluctuate and go back up, so we're trying to be very judicious. Perkins grant, we have had approximately $105,000, $104,000 each year for the last several years, and we're pretty confident that that is a good number for reimbursements. The salary support reimbursement, once again, we're being a little conservative. We're still waiting for some projections from AOE. We don't have those. That is what we have built into this year's, and we think that's a fairly good number. It may go up. It tends to go up and is indexed to statewide average salaries, or half or a third of what the actual salaries are in the center. So we think that that's a pretty good number. Once again, as I explained at the November meeting, after we subtract the revenues from the expense, the difference is what we have to raise in tuition. The amount to be raised by taxes based on our calculations, and these are just preliminary, is $1,891,229. We divide that by the 6 semester average. That has been updated as well since the last. It's not been changed by much, but both the amount to be raised by taxes has gone up about 9,000 total, and the FTE has dropped a fraction. It was 29.12 originally, and so that's down about 0.2 of an FTE. So we're looking at a tuition of $14,670 compared to $16,314 for the FY21 budget. We have a state payment of $1.137 million, and that also is divided by the 6 semester average. Once again, 128.92. And we have a slight difference from what we reported back in November of 91.89. It's now 91.97. So that's up, I believe, $8. If my math is correct in my head. Total per cost per FTE, $23,799 compared to $25,005 a year ago. Down $1,700 and some change. Ongoing costs from the FY21 budget are new in FY22. I'm sharing these things that we have to continue to roll forward that are major contributors. So we have 120,000 for HRA, HSA expenses. We've broken that out. Austin did a nice job of calculating our HSA expenses because people have opted to do HSA versus HRA starting in January of this year. So we know what that cost is, and that is an obligation that we need to pay actually starting in this fiscal year, January 2021. We have to have that amount available. As you remember from last year's presentation and the budget, we have 120,000 in HRA expenses. We are rolling that over, but breaking it out into two buckets, one for 110 for the HRA and one for 10 for the HSA. That 10 for the HSA is fixed. We know that that is real. The cost for the HRA, however, is fluid and flexible. The HSA expenses are become the property of the insured, and the HRA expenses are subject to our use. So if the full amount that the board has budgeted is used, then there will be nothing to be returned. If the full amount that's budgeted is not used, then that goes back to the board for future use. We have health insurance
Can I ask
costs.
a question?
Sure.
Yeah, this is Steve. I'm just, I thought that there wasn't an HSA option in the statewide negotiation. I'm just curious how that cropped up.
It is in the VHI option that has been negotiated as part of the statewide agreement.
That's part of the latest statewide agreement?
That's my understanding. Austin, you can help clarify.
Yeah, the negotiations, I think, were ratified a year ago or so, but the HSA component goes into effect January 1st of 2021. So that's an obligation for every school district who is participating. That is a mandatory requirement. So there's no choice on our end for that piece.
Okay, so it wasn't implemented in the beginning of the settlement. It was something that was phased in.
Yeah, and then I guess subsequent negotiations will have future phase-ins in a couple of years, but that was the most significant change in the last round of negotiations for the state. And it will impact our entire fiscal year, so that's why we have it built in.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Steve, the other thing is that in order to be eligible for the the HSA option, the insured must select the silver CDHP plan rather than the gold.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Did I mention healthcare costs? The two in red are costs that are new costs, different from what was added into last year's budget for FY21. So the birth transfer of 25,000, we're still keeping that in. That's level funded from last year, and the legal contingency is also level funded at 21. So that's not adding anything to the budget in terms of expenses. The health insurance cost, we are anticipating a $50,000 increase. That's based on 10%. And then we have construction technology. That program would be due to be a full day, a two-level full FTE program, and the additional cost we're projecting at about $24,000 to implement that completely. So the new costs on here are $74,000. But if you look at the carryover costs, we have 120 plus 46, so we have 166,000 of continuing costs that are baked into our year-to-year budgets. That's just for your reference. It doesn't impact the bottom line. We were level funding the budget. Then those numbers, if we were just looking at a level funded budget, those numbers would already be included. And so when you're looking at a $74,000 increase, I think it's to Austin's credit that we have been able to, we'll talk about that in the next slide, able to drop the budget down to, actually, excuse me, let me go back for a second. On this slide of 66,000, that includes the that drop of 66,000 includes an increase in those two areas of 74,000. So just so that you have that as a point of reference for what we're looking at for the budget. Program overview and details. Programs are at or above historical averages. Pre-tech programs were at all-time highs last year. We saw a drop due to COVID this year, and expecting to see a resurgence for next year, hopefully with greater coordination on the scheduling. And unlike the general fund education programs, decisions for CTE programs are based on industry demand and AOE approval. I just keep reminding people that we have 2 masters, and we're looking to be able to provide workforce development for the Department of Labor and labor market partners and industries. Center overview continued. We have the Hannaford Career Center is in the middle of the 3 independent career centers in terms of overall budget, between Bennington, which is the Southwest Career Development Center, and Springfield River Valley. There are some notes that I have that are not on this slide, but when there was a comparison done a couple of years ago, Jay Ramsey reported to me that River Valley, Springfield had the lowest of the 3 independents at a $3.2 million budget. The Bennington Southwest had a $3.5 million budget, and the Career Center had about a $3.4 million budget. And so we're projecting that those have maintained a certain level. He did not have the actual numbers for me to be able to provide for you for this year's comparison. And in speaking at length with Agency of Education and Jay Ramsey in particular over the last couple of weeks, he said that it was difficult for us to calculate FTE costs. I know that was one of the questions that the board charged me with looking into, but the way that those that centers report their costs, they are usually just reporting tuition costs, and that is difficult for us to compare because the way we report and the way others have reported are not apples to apples. Jay told me to be careful about doing that, and that it makes it very difficult to calculate the total cost. He was much more comfortable giving me the figures to let you know that we're right in the middle of the other 2 independents. He did say he would be willing to come to a future board meeting and help us to all understand the complexities of the calculations that have been asked for, because there are no common reporting mechanisms for all CTE centers across the state. The closest that we get are on the 3 independents. He is hoping that the new chart of accounts will allow for a greater opportunity for doing those cost comparisons, both by programs and by object codes, which are the expenses that you would pay for materials, for salaries, for benefits, and so on and so forth. So he said that doesn't currently exist for us to be able to do that particular comparison. I will continue to gather more information and try to refine that and do a presentation when I know what the numbers and the actual comparisons are accurate. Last year, I do want to put a plug in. While I was going through this, one of the things that I did find out is that last year, the Hannaford Career Center served the 2nd largest number of students statewide after North Country. North Country Career Center served 441 students last year. We were 2nd with 399 students served. And then Essex came in at 2nd with 386. Now, I need you to be careful about looking at those numbers, because those numbers do not translate directly into FTEs. We served more students, but we have a larger number of pre-tech students. They don't count as much as the students that are in full technical programs. And I would have to do some digging to be able to compare. My understanding is that Essex, the number 3, does not have many pre-tech program offerings. But North Country, by contrast, does have quite a few. The difference between them is North Country benefits from a very large high school that's on site, and almost all of their students cycle through pre-tech. So at some point in the future, I'd be happy to try to get more information about those comparisons and show you how many of those FTEs come from technical students and how many come from pre-tech students. But I don't have that available at this point in time. But I did think that it was an interesting figure that Jay helped me to uncover, being the second to serving students in career and technical ed overall.
So, Dana.
Yes.
Nick. So it sounds as if we're all more or less in the same cost range, and I mean, nobody's way out of line. I mean.
Yeah, and I have those figures we can look at here. You know, PHHC at 3.4, that was a couple of years ago. Southwest at 3.5, and River Valley at 3.6. So we, in terms of running a program, in terms of running programs for students, we are very much in line. The problem comes down to the how it's being represented by the FTE count, and everybody has acknowledged those are somewhat antiquated measures for reporting them. Right. There is a work group working with Agency of Ed. I'm not on that one, that is looking at regulation changes that would help bring that up into the 21st century, into the third decade of the 21st century. The regs and some of the statutes date back to the 80s and 90s. So they are in significant need of review.
But it is reassuring that we are not really out of line in any major way at the moment.
I would say that cautiously, Nick, that's true. But once again, it will take a little bit more for us to drill down into why that FTE cost that we report is higher than others. The only thing that I can say, and it's not as an excuse, it's simply offering an explanation that was offered to me by AOE, is that the way that the total costs are reported are not the same. For example, one of the examples that he did give me was that you could have a school such as North Country, and I'm not saying that this is the case for North Country, but it's just an example. North Country may have had a renovation done as part of a debt project, and that debt project would not necessarily be recorded in their tuition costs.
Yeah.
Because their SD or SU does not have to report bond costs. For some reason we do, and I'm not sure why. So I will get down to that, because our costs on the bond and what we have to pay yearly for that principal payment represents about $1,000 per student.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are some things that we still need to work on. And Jay Ramsey did ask me if my head had any space left in it, if I could work with him moving forward on trying to get some of these questions answered. And I said, as long as I'm not dead, I will do my best to do that.
Who is Jay Ramsey exactly?
He is in charge of the CTE unit at the Agency of Education.
Okay.
And there are a couple of people, there are 2 or 3 other members that work under that work unit at AOE. But I've worked with Jay for the last 4 years, and he's been very helpful. He's helped me to gain a much better understanding of the funding and financing around CTE.
Good. Thank
you. You're quite welcome. Let me go to the next slide. So career programs are singular. Each instructor is a program, and we currently do have some capacity for additional students. And that's where, if we go back to the question of the class size matrix, Nick, to your question, we're going to be using that to help guide us in terms of looking to recruit and fill out more of that, of the program capacity using those guidelines, with an optimal number being the middle of the range, and certainly a full capacity being at the top of the range. And we had 2 programs this year that were at capacity for the year. Many were just below capacity. I think we had, excuse me, let me correct that. I think we might have had 3. That may have changed because of student choices and changing their enrollment since the start of the school year. But we had 3 that were right at maximum, and we had a larger number last year. That's dropped a little bit. I think it's somewhat COVID related, but we are allowed to count all of our students who are participating, whether they're doing remote learning or as long as they're doing it with us in our student count and FTE count for this year. So we're hoping to work on adding to that, reducing that capacity and adding to the numbers in each of our programs. Questions? Austin has an overview. I think, Austin, if you wanted to share the screen, I can share with you, and you can give the board a very quick overview of where that 66,000 is coming from.
Sure. Yeah, Patrice, could you make me the presenter now?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Hey.
Here you go, Austin.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just minimize the Zoom here. Okay, can you all see what I have up here?
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, as Dana touched on, these are just, it's a quick one-page overview of the major cost drivers. It's not every single line item that ties out to the budget in entirety, but it's a pretty close approximation. So in essence, we just looked at kind of major categories or buckets that are significant cost drivers that would affect the bottom line. So the first bucket or component was salaries, which is our biggest cost driver bar none. And as Dana mentioned in his presentation, we're essentially showing a reduction despite keeping 2 retiring or exiting staff at full capacity who are at the top of their pay scale. And this number also reflects an increase in a construction tech FTE for next year. So all in, we're still showing for salaries that we're coming in below where we were for our current fiscal year for next year with those significant changes. If we move down to benefits, again, those are mostly tied to the salary pieces, especially Social Security and any benefits. So the reduction there is consistent with the salary reduction. I'm still waiting for or crunching the numbers on the actuals for the HRA component. So as Dana referenced, once I have more firm numbers, that'll drive the HRA components. And HSA, as we know, is a known cost. It's actually 10.6. So those numbers will likely change slightly once we get a more firm glimpse there. Core programming, the goal was to keep everything level funded or come in just under what we did last year. I guess across the board, most programs were very conscious of their costs and trying to keep I guess, strike a balance between funding the programming costs and coming at or under what they were for fiscal year 21. So all in, we're showing a slight decrease there, $1,400. Let's see. I think the biggest component in the administrative overhead piece is we're showing in the IT department significant savings in equipment and software that we didn't need to purchase next year. The Board of Ed contingency is built in, and Board of Ed again is level funded. So that's, I guess, a conversation that may be worth having. Just what that contingency piece looks like based on our need and the reality of anticipating legal fees or any of that sort of thing. Debt service is pretty standard. Not a lot of movement or change there. And for operations, we're showing a slight decrease in some supplies and utilities. And again, the BRF transfer of $25,000 is built in. So all in, just factoring in these changes in the core departments or buckets, we're looking at close to a $70,000 change from fiscal year 21.
I want to say thanks to Austin. He has really drilled down into the actual pennies, quite honestly, for the calculation. He's done a whole revamp, or in the process of doing a whole revamp of how we examine the budget and present it. So that's a refreshing support for the work that I do. And so I want to compliment him highly for pulling that together. Like you said, there are some things that we still need to look at in terms of firming up some of the lines. But when we did the ballpark calculation of 75, you can see that we're not too far off from that. And he's got a lot of detail that goes behind these numbers that we are comfortable with. So wanted to give you that reassurance. Thanks, Austin.
Sure.
Steve here. I'm just curious. Is there a brief summary of what's under the Board of Education category?
Sure. Do you need me to go into? I mean, if you can pull up our budget from last year, I can send you a copy as well offline, Steve. But essentially, as we're keeping it level funded, the line items are the same as what was listed in the annual report and the budget from last year.
Austin, can you maybe just highlight a couple of the big categories that have drivers in there? The HRA HSA of 120 is in that Board of Ed line of the 220 that you have there, Steve. That's the biggest cost driver.
I see.
And I can share that here, Steve, if you want to see.
Yeah, I can also look it up. I just wasn't. It seemed like an odd title for that category. So.
Yeah. So these are, I guess, the components of the board budget that we have built in here. Did you have any questions about a specific line in particular, or?
This is just for the board?
Board operations.
Yes, you'll notice there's some insurance, like unemployment is built into there. The HRA costs are the biggest component of that. And then our audit services are another large expense we incur annually, and the contingency, which is mostly attributed to legal services at the moment.
Okay.
So those are the bigger ones, and then you can see the rest there.
You also have our audit services in there as well.
Yeah, the audit service makes a lot of sense. I just why the HRA would be in this category is a little bit of a head scratcher, but
it needed to be placed someplace, Steve, a couple of years ago when we were needing to budget, and it can easily go to another category. It's just been there for the last couple of years.
Okay. Well, that explains a lot of it. It seemed like a pretty high number just to cover board expense. So.
I guess it's there because it was a board obligation to cover that expense.
So Austin, this is Suzanne. Would it make sense to take that HRA benefit and put it somewhere else? And so that's question one. And question two is how can you say for sure that the HSA, you know exactly what that's going to be for moving forwards?
Because it's a front-loaded expense that needs to be facilitated January 1st of 2021. So every year that the HSA is active, the school needs to transfer those funds directly into the HSA accounts. Whereas with the HRA, the costs are incurred as the medical expenses happen. So somebody may have an HRA plan, but they don't ever see the doctor, so then there aren't any expenses incurred. Whereas with the HSA, those funds are automatically deposited into the individual's accounts directly on January 1st.
So the HSA, would that not change by people's either electing to take that on or changing policies?
Sorry?
Does the HSA change as each year as people sign up for their health benefits?
Yeah, so every year when we do open enrollment, that'll look slightly different. And again, let me just get out of the screen sharing here. So for fiscal year 22, there's been some slight movement with people changing plans, either from a single plan to a family plan, or some have actually dropped off. But we're forecasting both the addition of the HSA and then just any open enrollment changes that have happened over the past few days.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yes, Suzanne, I do.
Yeah.
Austin, I was wondering on the reduction in the instructional line. You said that was due to retirements. Did I hear that right?
For the salaries?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess the two things to focus on for that is we've built in the two instructors that are retiring this year who will not be with us for next fiscal year. We've kept their salaries and benefits intact to keep it level funded, and both teachers are at the top of their salary scale. So in all likelihood, when we recruit replacements for those two positions for next year, we will probably come in under where they were previously. So those two salaries in particular are already baked into that savings. So if we do realize a $5,000 salary savings on one instructor, that'll drop the bottom line as well. We won't know that until the recruitment pans out over the next few months, but that is a positive indicator that we would hope to build on for next year's budget.
Great, thank you. Because I was wondering if those two positions still remained in there. So you answered.
Oh
me.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? Discussion? Thank you, Austin and Dana. Sure, we will be hearing more as we move into January.
That presentation.
What's that, Nick?
Could we get a copy of the presentation?
Dana?
Yeah, we can send out both the PowerPoint and Austin's one page summary, if you like. Is that your question, Nick?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, yep, we can do that. That may be tomorrow, but.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you.
Internal financial controls checklist for schools.
Yeah, I'll summarize that in 30 seconds, but this is tied to just our annual audit, and this is more just an FYI for the board. It's a draft to be acted on in the next board meeting or the board meeting afterwards. So once we finish with our audit, we'll be able to go through this checklist in its entirety and fill it in, and then present it to the board for approval at either next board meeting or the board meeting after.
And Austin, I think you've already asked Patrice to put that on the January agenda. Whether that gets moved or not, that's okay, but we just need that as a placeholder to make sure that it's not forgotten. Correct? Okay, thanks.
Yes. So there's no discussion needed on this, Suzanne. It's just more FYI for next month.
Reports to the board, they were sent out. Did anybody have any questions for anybody who sent us reports, or any comments or thank yous? Or I want to say, David, I think you're doing great in the adult tech world. Seeing that those classes are full or close to full is really great considering the environment we're in.
Thank you.
So I had a question on the budget and policy report.
Yeah, Steve?
They start out with a discussion of the FY21 expenditures, and then the next section discusses FY20 revenue. Is that because revenue lags so far behind expenditures that you're updating it from accounts receivable that are quite delayed?
I think that might be a typo, Steve. I think that is FY21 because it's those revenues, correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, but those revenues are this year's revenues, right? They're not last year's revenues, correct?
Correct. We're receiving revenues based on our FTE count that was reported out to the AOE this time last year.
Yeah. But they are, I mean, technically those are FY21 revenues, Steve.
Yes.
So I think we can, with the budget and policy, we can make sure that those are both aligned. FY21 and FY21.
Okay. I saw it on 2 consecutive reports, and I thought there was some logic behind it. But and then there's
well, Steve, let me just clarify. At some point in time, we don't have anything to report on FY21 revenues. So it may have been that it was FY20 revenues that was still coming in. For example, Perkins comes in late. We actually get it in the following year, but it goes back to the previous year. So that may have been on a previous report, and there may have been either a typo or a failure to update the actual year.
okay. The other question on the revenues is it describes an amount, and then it says that there's a difference, which is some $3 million and change. Can you explain what the difference is?
I'll take it. I thought Austin was going to, but Austin just mentioned that we got a 600,000 disbursement. So if that had come in before this meeting had occurred, then it would say that instead of having year-to-date revenues of 389,000, it would say 989,000, and the difference would then be 2,800,000. So Austin just keeps track of what is coming in, and the difference is the warned budget, so that what you will have is at the end of the year, a reconciled budget of revenues that came in and those that are still to be captured.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lorraine, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Susan. I had a question for Jay. When I was looking at your report, I noticed you were talking about the student support and that there are some students who are struggling to meet the minimum proficiency expectations. And I was just wondering whether that's a fairly large number, or is that a larger number than we normally would see at this time? And if like the strange situation that we're all in or were in the spring have anything to do with that? Yeah, just wondered if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so fortunately, it's not a large number. It's a pretty small percentage of our students. The other thing that's a little bit different this year, we had not established the minimum proficiency of a 2.0 in order to earn credit last year. So that's actually new this year. So there are some students that got credit last year that had lower proficiency scores. So with that adjustment, I think there are some students who are, are struggling with that. The other piece is we are seeing the students who are not in person as much. They are certainly more of the ones who are struggling. So if the hybrid model, if they're learning fully remotely, those are generally more often ones that they're struggling to meet that minimum proficiency.
That makes sense. I just wanted to confirm it. Thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, Christina.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question for the facilities, related to the facilities report. Can somebody just remind me, is there a limit as to what the board approves versus what we don't approve for an expenditure? Because I was just curious about the water heater expenditure. Was that something the board should approve or not, or the committee just does it on their own? Thank you.
Dana, do you want to?
Christine, if you want, I can try and field that question. Each year we present to the full board what the amount is that we have in the BRF, and we ask for authorization for the facilities committee to approve up to $15,000, because I can approve myself up to 5. So in order to be able to do things that need attention without having to wait for, like, the water heater was leaking all over the floor. In order to be able to get something done that needs to be done, I can't authorize that. So what we do once a year, I think it's usually in the August or September board meeting, is authorize the facilities committee to expend up to the limit that would otherwise have to come to the board.
And
Thank you. I thought I remembered that, but I just wasn't sure what the amount was. Thanks.
that was Lorraine's issue too, a couple of board meetings ago.
Yes, it was, Nick. You have a very good memory.
I remember everything you say, Laura.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered.
I have a question for Dana.
Well, I hope my last response was consistent.
Yeah,
to the
you
first
saved
time.
me. This is not on the call. The grant from Gear on
Yes.
the 228,000.
Yes.
Could you give me the status on? Give us a status on that, and how you intend to account for it if we get something?
Well, the status is it's pending, and it's gone back for a review. So I submitted. I got some feedback from the reviewer or the reviewers, and I resubmitted that. They needed some clarification. So Austin and I worked a little bit and put that together and gave them more clarifying details. There are basically a few buckets that we are looking to use that money for. One is infrastructure costs that have to do with either technology or accessibility for students. 2 is in the area of curriculum enhancements. 3 is in equipment area, and 4 is in some personnel costs that are broken down into program and services to students. Well, transportation, because we're running, we're trying to make sure that all of our students who want to be in person 4 days a week can be, and that has a significant cost for us to do runs. I think our longest run, Jay, help me out here maybe, is 23 miles beyond the Mount Abe district for us to be able to transport students in one direction or the other, but it's a 46-mile round trip. Commitment for us to be able to do that. Fortunately, we're not taking one student at a time. We have a route that is picking up or dropping off a number of students. And then we have some health services costs. That's the final bucket. Those are, you would think that those would be large, but they're relatively minor compared to some of the others. And that is just to make sure that we have Well, we do have some adult ed costs that are health services related as well. So it's both, that gear money is being directed towards supporting both secondary programs, daytime programs, and adult ed programs. I will say that the adult ed programs only represent 15 to 20% of the total cost, and the bulk of it is for daytime program supports.
Thank you. Have any of those potential funds been built into next year's budget?
No. Those are costs that would be one-time costs. They should not be recurring costs. Now, what I can say, Nick, is that some of those costs do go into next year because the run-out period goes through September of 2022. Right. So what we've built in can be expended over an 18-month period.
Okay, so it's going to be neutral. If
it is going to be cost neutral, right? That's the way it's
funds, you're going to expend them.
Correct.
Okay.
Dollar in, dollar out.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I do want to make note, and I can't pull it up right now, but there was a very extensive list and very well-populated list of outstanding students for the first quarter. I'd like to publicly thank all the teachers that spent the time in nominating students and putting their names forward, and hearty congratulations to all the students that have found their names on that first quarter outstanding student list. And I apologize, due to COVID, we can't celebrate with all of them, but I want them all to know that we give them a hearty cheer.
Thanks, Suzanne. And that was, they were all listed in Jay's report just for future.
You did, I saw that hearty cheer.
And I hope that people found the tables that I added in my report that were supporting the budget. I didn't review those additionally in the presentation this evening because of time constraints. But if you do have any questions at any point, feel free to send me an email and I will be happy to explain those. I did spend a considerable amount of time updating them and showing you the trends. So hopefully that was informative.
Helpful. Thank you.
Anything else before we move to other for board operations and then wrap up to go into executive session? Nope. Christina, would you like to do policy 4.1 governing style, please?
Sure. I'll give it a go. We're a little over time here, but I think you did a great job of keeping us on task, and thumbs up, everybody.
Thank you. So Karen, just to let you know what the policy 4.1 governing style is, at the end of every meeting, we reflect on how we have done as a board in participating, keeping ourselves on task, kind of moving through the flow of the meeting, and so being respectful and nice to each other is also part of it. So, and someone is either nominated by me to give the report, or someone might nominate themselves to give the report. So that's kind of what that is in a nutshell. We have next executive session. So I just want people to understand that the link we're in right now, while we have been meeting, Patrice has been setting up a separate room where she will admit currently board members. Board members, I will give you instructions once we get in there, and then we have guests that will be arriving into that board meeting. So, and then once we're done the executive session, we'll come back to this room. And if there's any actions to be taken, motions made, we'll make it once we come out of the executive session meeting room. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Does anybody need me to clarify anything?
Yes,
Judd?
please, Judd. Just wondering how we transition into that other room. Do we have to sign out of this as usual and sign into, or is this a different system?
So within Zoom, you can set up meeting rooms.
Okay.
And so since Patrice is still in charge of the meeting. She will admit people to that meeting room.
Okay.
And so you'll see, like on mine, the host is inviting you to breakout room 1.
Yep, it
And
just
so she's
popped up
going to
on
pull
mine.
us over. Okay,
Great.
but don't go until we have a motion to go into executive session, please.
Right.
So
Would you
could
like
I have
somebody
that-
to make that motion?
I need someone to make that motion, please.
I move that we transition to executive session.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to move into executive session for personnel and negotiations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so I will meet you in room 1, please.
Is Linda gonna not be back again?
Say that again, Lorraine?
Linda, she will not be coming back after the executive session.
That's up to you guys, not me.
No, I don't see any reason. I just wanted to make sure I will keep track of when we come back out, and I'll email you.
Thank you very
Unless
much.
somebody wants you to stay. I mean, I'm just,
That works for me.
okay. Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.